just to get kind of a starter on that. And then when I was looking at the Sugar Mountain lesson, then I looked at a whole bunch of people playing it, including Neil.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and as usual, he's kind of wandering around the stage while he's playing it. So yeah, and, but there was some other people that I could really focus in on, which was really good.
Uh-huh.
And I found out I didn't know there's a lot of people out there doing Neil Young covers,
Yeah, it's pretty popular.
and a lot of people singing Neil Young, and that's hard.
Yeah, yeah.
But one of the people that I saw covering Sugar Mountain was some guy in the Phoenix Guitar League, and I remembered, didn't you go
Yeah,
there one time,
yeah.
or you've spoken there? You know those people or something?
Yeah, yeah. The guy that runs it, Bart, is a longtime friend and student of mine. That through Totally Guitars, he's been to most of our camps. He usually comes to camp, uh, and so I did two of those. I think I did the very first one when they just opened a couple of years ago,
Okay.
and maybe I've done three. I think I did another one a few months later, and then I did one about a year ago. That kind of in the coming out of the COVID for the first time.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, yeah.
Okay. Well, this guy's name was, I wrote it down, Dana Grant.
Yeah. Okay. So Dana is kind of Bart's assistant, or like Dana almost came to camp with Bart last year.
Okay.
Bart had to cancel at the last minute. Now that I think about it, but yeah. So Bart and Dana are really, and Dana puts together a lot of videos. Actually, over the COVID time, he put together a lot of kind of like instructional and idea videos for the Guitar League, and that was kind of like their meeting is Dana's videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I found he has a YouTube channel.
Oh, you know
So
what? He's even done either public talks or something about Neil Young and his music. Like he's done a lot of research and has some like a pro. Anyway, so he's more than just like a fan. I mean, he's kind of dug into him almost like biographer level too.
yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. You could tell watching the stuff that he seemed to know what he was doing and talking about.
yeah, yeah.
And he was one of the better singers, by the way, of the Neil Young stuff.
Ah,
Yeah.
we have well, Bart, this other guy, is also a fabulous singer, and he does a lot of like Jim Croce and James Taylor songs and things like that. And then we have another camper named Jeff who lives in Monterey, who does Neil Young like just perfectly. I mean, he's just got the same range. He's a big guy. He's like probably close to my size. And so it's funny to see, this big hulking guy with this really high voice, and it's just beautiful. He does America tunes and stuff.
Oh, really?
Anyway, yeah, we got to talk about you maybe coming to camp this year, and you can meet some of these people.
Well, I still have that on my tentative list.
Yeah.
So,
So, what did you discover about like different ways people played the chords?
well, I was playing it the way that it looks like Neil plays it, the way that you have it in your lesson.
Yeah.
And at first, it took me a while. I was trying to figure out, frankly, what key we were in,
Okay.
and so I decided, since this thing has both G's and F major seventh, that this has to be in C.
Okay.
That was my guess, and,
Okay.
because of the D minor thing, up the neck. Um, that's what I decided.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
um,
Okay. So, when we say it's in the key, if I told you we were going to play Sugar Mountain, um, I wouldn't tell you we're going to play it in the key of C. I would tell you we're going to play it in the key of the chord that feels like it's home, which is obviously G in this case.
right, yeah,
And especially those first two chords, the first chord is basically what? In the introduction. What you were just sliding around back there. You're
well,
seeing.
yeah. I mean, I was the first chord in the intro is this
Right.
nine plus 11.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that's what we could call it that. I might have done that in my lesson. And I probably only did that once. It's like, okay, we're just going to call this the D chord. But when you have some kind of D, and this is basically a D major chord, not a D minor,
Yeah.
which is not leaning towards the key of C, right?
Right.
So we're hearing a D chord and a C chord back and forth as the intro, and that in itself leads us to what key?
The G.
Right. Okay, because that's the only key that would have C and D as both as major chords,
Right.
right? So the introduction is in C, is in G, and it lands on G, and now the song starts using F natural chord, the note F natural,
Right.
using so basically the key signature in the intro would be one sharp, and the key signature during the verse is no sharps and flats, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so but G is still home in this,
Yeah.
but the key signature is no sharps and flats. So what's the explanation, or how do we label that?
Uh, this is what confused me because at first I started out with, oh, this is in G. That's where I
Okay.
started. That's my initial thinking was it was in G, but then
Right,
I couldn't fit the chords into the G sequence, and
right.
that's why I went to C, and but I didn't account for the D. Um, well, what?
So basically, we have the key signature of no sharps and flats, but C is not home.
Right.
So what bucket does this fall into in terms of how we label it?
It's in a different mode then.
There you go. That's okay. That's kind of the step we needed to make. Is that this is not in G major or G minor.
Uh-huh.
It's in one of the other modes with G as home.
Okay.
And what are the two that you should remember the names of?
The two that I should remember the name of are Ionian and Aeolian.
Okay, that's the ones. Those are the two that are major and minor.
Major and minor, right?
Then we have two others that are the most common, other than those two.
Okay. Other than those two.
So basically, there are four modes that are commonly used.
Uh-huh.
Major and minor, Ionian and Aeolian are two of them,
Yeah.
and the other two, and so when we say it's Ionian or major, it means we've got the set of notes that are some major scale, and note one is home.
Right.
And if we say it's in a minor key, we still have those same set of notes from the major scale, but the home number is where note is what number?
It's 6.
Yeah. Okay. So that's really good to have that kind of filed away.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there are the two other modes that we've touched on briefly. That I don't know how far we've gone into this now. I'm doubting whether we've done very
Well,
much.
we talked about the rotation of what you just talked about, where home is, where one is, and in those two. Dorian
Okay. Yep.
and the one that sounds like
Right. It's a little.
Phrygian.
Oh, no. Very good. That's one of the three that we don't use very often.
Okay. Okay.
But you're right about the cocktail reference.
Oh, okay.
Mixolydian.
Mixolydian. Okay. Mixolydian. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, and in this case, in Sugar Mountain, we're revolving around what chord or what number note in the scale is being treated as home.
Uh, is being treated as home.
Because again, we're using a C major scale is the scale we're using,
Right.
but we're not centered around 1 or 6.
Right.
We're centered around
5.
5, which is G.
Right. Which is G.
And so of those two of Mixolydian and Dorian, do you remember which note either one of them treats as home?
Uh, no. Is there some hint that I should remember?
Probably not.
Okay.
But
So I'd guess D was Dorian, but
okay, no, that's a good way to remember it. Yes, in the natural world,
yeah.
the Dorian mode follows the D scale, is D to D with no sharps and flats.
Okay.
So that's what number of the scale?
Of
So the Dorian starts treat.
the C scale, that's 5.
No, no, no. We're talking about Dorian is the D pattern, right? In other words,
Oh, right.
and so the Dorian mode is based on step 2 of the major scale of because in the C scale in the C major world, D is the Dorian mode,
It's 2. Got it.
right?
Okay.
Okay, and one thing that you might be so the Dorian mode revolves around step 2, which means it also revolves around a minor chord. It means D minor is the tonic chord. And so the Dorian mode is almost like in the same pocket as the Aeolian mode, as the minor mode. Dorian is close to minor because chord 1 is minor.
Yeah.
And in Mixolydian, it's chord 5. Mixolydian is closer to major. So Mixolydian, we're in the Mixolydian mode here, which is based on step 5 of every scale.
Okay.
Now that also means okay, a short little lecture on this.
Okay.
Anyway, we're talking about the key signature of no sharps and flats.
Yeah.
And if I just hand you a piece of paper and you see no sharps and flats in there, and I ask you what key it is, the right answer right now is you don't have enough information. In other words, now if I say what major key has that key signature, now you have enough information to be 100% accurate with answering my question. Okay, because now, but if I say give me some examples of keys that have this no sharps and flats signature. Well, there are 7 of them. There's one for any one of the 7 notes of the scale could really be treated as home.
Okay.
And so when we talk about the minor scale that has that, we'd be talking about A, note 6.
Yep.
And we refer to A minor and C major as relative keys.
Yes.
Okay, relative major, relative minor. Well, there's also a relative Dorian key in that set, and it's D. So D Dorian is relative, meaning it has all the same notes as C major and A minor.
Right.
And G Mixolydian has the same set of 5 notes, same set of 7 notes.
Right.
So those are all what we call related keys. So again, now any one of those 4 answers plus 3 others that I'll get to just real briefly would be the right answer. If I hand you a piece of paper, no sharps and flats, and you tell me it's in G Mixolydian, you're not wrong. But what we have to do is then look at the piece and see what note gets where is home. You know, so you're already aware of the fact that if we see 1 sharp, it could be the key of G major or E minor.
Yeah.
Well, it could also be A Dorian, which would be step 2. It could also be D Mixolydian.
Yeah.
Okay, and it could also be in this. Let's go back to C. The other 3 names that we don't really need to use because we don't need to cloud the issue too much, but one of them is Phrygian, and the Phrygian mode is based on note 3.
Okay.
So that would be E minor would be the tonic chord if the song were in E Phrygian, and that actually is a sound you would have heard sometimes. This is almost an E Phrygian type sound. Basically playing E minor and F. And that's kind of how White Rabbit starts, the Jefferson Airplane song.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Now I wasn't making that. They really do it with a full E major chord to F. See, it sounds even more. It sounds more. So that sound of E and F both being played as major chords is sometimes referred to as a Phrygian cadence, or it's anyway. Enough about Phrygian. But Phrygian is based on step 3. And then there's one based on step 4, which is Lydian. So Mixolydian is 5 and Lydian is 4. And then there's one called Locrian that's based on step 7. Okay, enough of that. But the 3 ones we don't care about are Lydian, Phrygian, and Locrian. But
Okay.
the 4 we care about, or the 2 we really care about, are Dorian and Mixolydian. Okay. So this could be maybe an interesting project for you, or maybe a pound your head against a telephone pole project. But for the last couple minutes, I was talking about relative modes in one key signature.
Right.
And so, again, we see no sharps and flats. It could be C major, or C Ionian. It could be D Dorian. It could be E Phrygian. There really are, to divert for 1 second, the 7th mode, the Locrian one, is totally useless because the type of chord, in a major scale, it's a diminished chord that we have on step 7.
Right.
The idea of home is something you come home to rest, to be complete. That can't be a diminished chord. You can't stop on a diminished chord and feel like I'm home unless you're in a horror show or something, So for practical purposes, there are only really 6 modes that ever get used. This Locrian mode is not a real thing.
Uh-huh.
But just in the interest of completion, I guess it's like we have to account for all kinds of stuff. Anyway, okay, so if I were to play. Okay, I'm gonna try to wrap this story up so we can get back to the song in just a second. But so here's my C scale. Here's my D Dorian scale. Here's my E Phrygian scale. Get the idea? They all just start. They just go from one note to the next, and so those would all be relative modes under the same key signature, right?
Okay.
But my point with it now, a good project here, would be to look at parallel modes, meaning pick a note like G and play a G major scale, then play a G Mixolydian scale, then play a G Dorian scale, then play a G minor scale. And I went in that order for a very real specific reason. But that means you're going to play different notes in every one of those.
Okay.
Right? So you already know that your G major scale would have 1 sharp in it. F sharp. Well, the Mixolydian scale, we already found out that, or we know now, that the G Mixolydian scale follows a C key signature.
Right.
That would mean it doesn't have F sharp in it.
Right.
So that would mean it would be G to G without the F sharp. It's only 1 note different than the G major scale.
Right.
Here's the G major scale again. Here's the G Mixolydian scale. So, as kind of like a mathematical formula, to relate a major scale to its parallel Mixolydian scale, meaning starting on the same note,
Yeah.
you flat the 7th note you lower the 7th note a half step. Instead of having a half step between 7 and 8,
Yeah.
half step between 6 and 7.
Okay.
Following that kind of?
Yeah, I can see it for the example we're using here.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I can see that. Yeah.
yeah, and And so now the G, if I want to go to the G Dorian scale,
Right.
I would follow the key signature for what key? What major scale would G be the Dorian relative of?
G Dorian. Okay. I'm gonna go back through the logic here. If G Mixolydian is starts on 5,
Okay.
um, and G major starts on 1,
Right.
G minor, which is Aeolian, starts on 6, and G Dorian must start on 2.
So what note would be 1 in that case?
Well,
What we're trying to do is figure out the key signature for G Dorian by figuring out what major key, what major scale has the same notes as G Dorian. And so that does mean G would be step 2 of that major scale.
right.
So G is
So
step 2 of what?
G is, well, step 2 of F.
Right. So F major, whatever the key signature is for F major, do you know that off the top of your head?
I'd have to rattle through it. Um,
F has one thing kind of worth keeping a little red flag around for. Because the F scale, well, it would go F, G, whole step
G,
to A, and then a half step, which means it's got B flat in it.
right,
And that's the only flat in an F. So the key of F has one flat.
flat. Okay. Yeah, then you go to, yeah.
And when I say there's like why that should stand out a little bit is every other key that has flats has to start on a flat. The next key with flats is the key of B flat, and then E flat, and then A flat, as we're going counterclockwise around a circle of fifths.
Okay.
So F is the only natural note key of our 7 letters that has a flat in it, which
Okay.
should make perfect sense because we know that F sharp is the first sharp in the sharp keys.
Okay.
So we can't have an F sharp, in other words, so the key of F has to be on the other side of the circle.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Um, okay. So the end of that story for now, and then we'll get to the song is so the G Dorian scale follows the F major scale,
Okay.
and it's going to have one note different. Remember, G Mixolydian had no sharps and flats.
Right.
G major had one sharp.
Right.
Mixolydian had none. Dorian is going to have one flat in it because it's going to have the flat from the key of F.
Right.
So that's going to be a B flat in the G Dorian scale. It's going to go G, A. Here's my major scale again. Here's my Mixolydian scale. The Dorian scale would have a B flat in there and all the other same notes as the Mixolydian one.
Okay.
As soon as we hear that, that's why this starts sounding minor. Because I've got B flat, and then a C and a D and an E and an F up to G. So, and then just to really wrap this up, to take it one step further, the minor scale, G minor, would be the same as the key that G would be note 6 of,
Right.
which is B flat. So a B flat scale has 2 flats in it. Not just B flat, but it'll have E flat in it too. Here's my B flat scale. And here's the G minor scale that starts on G but plays all those same notes. That's only one note different than the Dorian version.
Right.
So you know what? I I have a lesson at totally at TG. If you have trouble finding it, it's called Modes Inside and Out.
Okay.
Oh no, the Inside Modes. It's under Fundamentals. Let me I can probably find it faster and just send you the link. Um, okay, I just sent you the link to my lesson on modes, so you
Okay.
can check that out later. Hey, but it sounds like you got the idea of what's going on here in the hammer-ons on the D chord particularly.
In the intro, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I picked up was that the rhythm of this in the intro, well, actually, the rhythm through the whole thing, I guess, is it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and
Pretty much, yeah.
right, bass to bass, and then followed by that hammer on the one of or the
Yeah, that was perfect. It was perfect. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
okay. But that part is somewhat variable.
Right.
So
That's really important. That you got to just mess around with that, and you can hammer on the third string as well. Then when he gets to the G, he does a lot of times he'll bring on the two notes of a C chord.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that's kind of the little vamp that can that also doesn't really have to go any particular way.
right,
Uh,
right. When it gets to the G, those are one measure changes. Yeah, right.
with the G and the C,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, are we? Let's see. When we go there, we're are we thinking? We playing a? We're playing a C with G in the bass. Are we doing?
yeah, yeah,
What we're doing?
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's sort of it straddles a line between just a little embellishment on a G chord and a full sound like it really has changed to a C chord.
Right.
So, because a lot of times you'll hear something like this, just a little quick bounce to the C for like one beat, and
Okay.
then it's not worth putting that in the chart. That there's a C with G in the bass for a beat or a beat and a half in the middle of this measure of G, but in this case, we kind of hear that C for a whole measure more or less, and it also could sound really cool to hammer it on the first beat. Instead of hitting a bass note there,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Really. So anything anything you want to do there is good. This is we don't want to find a recording of Neil's and do a note for note transcript. In the middle of the third verse, he did this. It's like
Right.
he couldn't remember. He wouldn't remember what he did in that verse. It's like it's yeah. So, now I did. Oh, so a lot of times when Dana was playing this, did he go to the F with the high G on it still?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
almost watch your first finger. Yeah. 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 And so that's an add nine chord, right? It would be F add nine. Um, there would be times when you could play when it would sound better if you're gonna sing this. Well, you might not be singing it too much, but oh, you know what? Most of Neil Young's songs. This is another one I think he plays usually on a guitar tuned down a whole
Yeah.
step in the first place. Which means like if I can sing this, but I sing it an octave lower than where Neil would, so it'd fit in. Oh, to live on Sugar Mountain, so don't necessarily shy away from singing this because you can probably do it a whole down in your own register.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I would play a full barred F just for a little variety in the sound because there's four verses and the verses and the choruses are almost the same. And as a matter of fact, a really early recording I heard of Neil doing this, he did a lot of it with the G and the F just played up the neck out of a D shape. So if you slid a D chord up the neck,
Yeah.
where would it become G?
Well, D, E.
Not quite. Careful. Do that again. There.
Oh,
So that would be what?
yeah.
Yeah. And where would G be then?
Oh, G would be here.
Yeah. 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 So in one early recording of his, all he's doing is strumming the G and the F up here. Oh, to live on Sugar Mountain. And letting the D be in the bass on both of them.
Oh, okay.
So this would be another way, something else you could do like in another verse just to make it sound different.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then mathematically, but the chorus and the verse have, well, the chorus and the last three lines of the chorus. So we do the G and then F three times,
Right.
and then the D major seventh,
Minor seven.
minor seven, excuse me, D minor seven, where we do three of those back to two Gs,
Right. So it's out of balance.
out of balance.
Right. We got like a 5 measure line.
Right, for two lines, and then the verse itself is so it's five as well, right?
Um.
Let's see.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is.
No, in this part, this is just a normal 4, right? We basically have 2 measures of G and 2 measures of F.
After the G.
Are you talking about in the like at the beginning of a verse or the end? I'm lost a little bit.
Well, the verse. Okay, so the verse comes out of. So we were coming out of the chorus here. Yeah. There's one bar of G or one measure of G before the two Fs and then the two Gs. So there's 5 measures. It's so nice to
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, wait, gotcha. Yeah.
then of course, yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. You know what? I was having trouble getting the verse in my head until he sang that. It's so noisy at the fair. But you're exactly right. All the verses are these 5 measure lines.
Okay.
G, 2 Fs, 2 Gs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
And it's just 2 sets of those is a verse. 2 sets of those 5 lines.
right.
It's not 4, right? Okay.
Right. Just 2 sets of those. Yeah. It goes by pretty quickly. Yeah. There's the little the live version of him it's talking to the university students.
Yeah, at UCLA.
Yeah, I wrote 126
Yeah,
of this. Got it down to these five
yeah,
or something.
yeah. Did you find that on YouTube?
Yeah,
Okay, because that was a really sought after bootleg in the early days. There was a record called "I'm Happy You All Came Down."
yeah,
That was, and I remember, feeling like like I found the Holy Grail when I found that at a record store here in Los Gatos, in San Jose, back in right after it came out, 1973 or 72, and yeah, and there were a couple records, couple of double bootlegs that I have that were put out by what the company was called Rubber Dubber Records, and luckily there was this one store in San Jose called Underground Records
uh-huh.
that carried bootlegs, and man, my friend Mike and I, we felt like we were in heaven every time we go in there and find some valuable thing that nobody else had and stuff. And I'll have to bring one of those out and show you sometime. I still have them there. They're prized possessions,
I think
But
Neil would be shutting that down these days.
well, yeah, boy, interesting. I was talking to my friend Bruce yesterday about this, and he said, on one hand, it seems like the left is getting just as wild as the right, with not
Yeah.
with impressing their view, with trying to force their views on stuff. Now, the interesting thing about Neil Young, there's a video at YouTube of him going into a record store. I think it was in Palo Alto, and walking out with his bootlegs because he said he owned them. And these stories made the rounds in Rolling Stone back in the early '70s too. Is that Neil Young was seen in a record store in New York taking his own records out. It's like, yeah. So he's been a staunch anti-bootleg guy for a long time, but now he's heavily monetizing his own bootlegs. All these concerts with his archives and stuff.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
very much so. Um, well, I'm going to continue to work away at Sugar Mountain here,
Good.
and um, want to find something else.
Oh,
Same
you know what?
lines.
Yeah. Play that D minor 7 chord again.
Here.
Yeah. If you were only playing those top three notes, so if we didn't have the D in this, what chord is that?
Well, it's the start of an F chord.
Right. It's more than the start. It's all the notes in an F chord. In other words, that it's an F, an A, and a C.
Oh yeah. C. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
right there, you've got a complete F chord. You just don't have any bass, with it. But what that means is, and so every seventh chord has two triads inside it. I think we touched on this a little bit, but so like a D minor 7 chord
Yep.
has the notes of a D minor triad in it plus something else.
Plus something. It's the plus something else part.
Plus the seventh. In other words, so D minor is a triad that is a subset of the notes in D minor 7.
Okay.
Right? So the notes that in a seventh chord we've got four notes, 1, 3, 5, and 7.
Right.
Well, 1, 3, and 5, if we take out the 7, we've got some kind of triad that we started with, either a major or a minor.
Right.
We also have a triad, though, of the three notes that are 3, 5, and 7. If we take the root out of our seventh chord, we're left with another triad.
Okay.
And in this case, the notes in D minor are D, F, and A.
Hmm.
And if we add a seventh to it, we're going to add C.
Hmm.
So D minor 7 is D, F, A, C.
Right. Right.
Well, if I take the D out, I'm left with F, A, C.
Right.
The three notes, that's an F chord,
Right. Right.
right? So a D minor 7 chord and an F chord are all involved in, I mean, F and D minor are two triads that are in a D minor 7 chord.
Okay.
And so the point of that is, you can also play D minor 7 by playing this little D shape up at the 5th fret where it would be an F chord and making sure that you hear the D with it.
Okay.
Yeah, and compare that. This it's the same chord as this. You know, if I play. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so sometimes for variety too, you could play the D minor 7 up here that I just told you a minute ago you could play as an F chord using the two D shapes up here.
Right.
Okay? So, matter of fact, Neil Young does something very similar with this D minor 7 chord, leaving the first string open
Mhm.
and then starting with a hammer on the on the 3rd string. That's the opening to Old Man. I don't. Did we talk about that?
Yeah. I don't think we have, but
Oh,
no.
ooh, this might have to be the next song you work on then,
Okay.
unless you had another plan yet.
No, I was looking for another plan.
Okay, I'll come back to Old Man in just a minute. So the end of this story is that when we play a 3-string triad, like whether a partial thing, either out of the E family, which is like what this F is,
Yeah.
or the D family, like we were talking about here. There's also the A family that would look something like this. There would be a reduction of the notes out of the A bar, right? And then all of those can be major or minor by moving, changing one note or something. But there are a lot of chords that kind of do double duty, or and that's kind of what I'm getting at here is that, up here we're messing around with a chord that is vacillating kind of between an F and a D minor 7. If I don't play the D in this chord, then I just have the notes of an F chord. But I also have the notes of a D minor 7 chord.
Right.
And you could sort of see how this would be related to the D minor 7 that could be played at the 5th fret out of the A family. Here's my A minor 7 shape at the 5th. Well, it's got those 3 notes in it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so these triads up the neck can get a little confusing because there are a lot of ones that, like I said, can do double duty. Like if somebody's playing an F chord, I could play this. If they're playing a D minor 7 chord, I could do this.
Okay.
Right.
And in context, then you decide what it is based on the context of the song.
Yeah, like what you're going to call it is kind of based on what you want to hear in the bass. Do I want to hear if I hear an F in the bass on this chord, I'm not going to think of it as a D minor 7.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, there's a door I shouldn't open right now but anyhow, but let's talk about Old Man a little bit because I think it's right up the alley of what you're looking to do next.
Okay.
It opens up with him messing around with this kind of sort of D minor 7-y thing, except that it's also got the E open. So he's just, he would have written this by just accidentally noodling around on the guitar and coming up with something liking the sound of that chord that is kind of nebulous and far of. It's like I'm not sure where it's going. It doesn't feel like it's like I'm not going to end there, And then he just embellishes that with some hammer-ons on the here. And kind of some focused picking, not just this. He's kind of hitting almost one string at a time in kind of a random way. So, but he then comes up with like a little bit of a theme, like when this note gets hammered. And right off the top of my head, I can't remember, but it might start like this, where the hammer-on's on beat 2. It might be on beat 1. And as his intro, he does something else kind of unusual. I think it's three of those, and then it comes down to a D, and then he does a little bit of messing around on the D. But I could do the hammer on beat one, or beat two, or beat three, and then land on a D. And when he comes down to the D here, you might hear something like this. You might hear a hammer on here. You know, you might hear messing around up on the first string.
Okay.
You might even hear a hammer on. We're not going to hear that one yet. Okay, I'm getting a Jethro Tull song in my head. Stop. Anyway, so that's kind of the opening to it. It's messing around with this partial D minor 7, but really with only two notes on at the 5th fret. Yeah, and then a hammer on the 5th string. Okay, sorry, 3rd string. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's what he does when he starts. So I'm sure I have tablature on my lesson on it that would be kind of note specific as to when he did that hammer on and how he picked it out. And it could be like a little bit like I Am a Child, where it might look a lot messier than it really is until you start playing it. You know, if it's you might be better off just trying to play it by ear and see what you come up with, and not get too caught up in the minutia of the tablature.
Okay.
But it's use both approaches though, and then it has a lot of the same type of thing that other songs of his have, where when he comes down here, so does a couple of these as an intro, then he starts singing, "Old man, look at my life. I'm a lot. God, where's that note? Old man, look at my life. I'm a lot like you." There we go. Old man, look at my life. I'm a lot like you. So it's got the same kind of cool picking and little melodies as like "Tell Me Why" and stuff we saw in the Beatles song and things like that, and a lot more variety than like Sugar Mountain, because we get into this. Oh man, there's a note. Oh man, look at my life. 24 and there's so much more. Live alone in a paradise that makes me think of two. Bunch of easy chords. D to the F major 7, to C, and to G. And the order changes like in each line. Oh man, look at my life. 24 and there's so much more. Live alone in a paradise that makes me think of two. Back to F that time. Love was such a cost. Give me things that don't get lost. And the 4th line is different. Like a coin that won't get tossed. Rolling, rolling home to you. Then he starts a really cool thing on the D. Old man, take a look at my life. I'm a lot like you. So, kind of syncopated strumming and stuff all in there.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Old man. Okay.
Yeah. In on that same bootleg that I'm Happy Y'all Came Down.
Yeah.
That came out before Harvest did, which is where this song was. And now I specifically remember my friend Mike and I were thrilled by these couple of songs that hadn't been released yet. And even on the bootleg, this one was just called "Look at My Life." It's like the bootleggers just had to guess what it was called, right? And so we were playing this like 4 people before the album even came out. We thought we were so cool, But on that same bootleg, I'll I can make a note to do that. I could give you a link to a spot where you could download it from like one of my servers if you want to hear that album. But I wouldn't be surprised if the whole thing's available at YouTube now anyway. But he talks, this was like a true story. He was 24 when he bought this ranch up here in Woodside, right, or in La Honda, and the caretaker kind of came with the ranch, and there's pictures of Neil talking to this guy as a young man, and this guy's is 70ish maybe or so, and has probably lived on that ranch for his whole life or something. But it's interesting evolution of that song.
Okay.
So,
Fun.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, that seems like a good project.